It was supposed to be a dream come true. A break from the relentless noise and stress of city life. A few weeks of peace and quiet in the tranquil suburbs of Northern California. An elderly couple, who were heading off on an extended vacation to Hawaii, asked me to look after their beautiful home and their 2 cats. The offer seemed too good to refuse: a gorgeous house, 2 sweet cats for company, and a free car to use. I thought it would be the perfect escape. At first, everything was as idyllic as I imagined. The days were filled with scenic hikes through the nearby mountains, visits to quaint little towns, and leisurely strolls through the quiet streets. The air was crisp, and the landscape looked like something out of a postcard. It was peaceful in a way that felt almost unreal. I could hear the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, the occasional chirp of a bird, and the far-off hum of cars, but there was an overwhelming sense of calm. The house was cozy, with large windows that let in plenty of sunlight, and the cats, adorable and affectionate, kept me company at night. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could truly relax. But it wasn't long before things started to feel off. It began with the cats. At first, I didn't think much of it. One of the cats, a shy little thing, had always been a bit skittish, but in the days that followed, her behavior became increasingly erratic. She began darting from room to room, her eyes wide and alert, her fur bristling as though she were constantly on edge. She'd stare into empty corners of the rooms, her head tilting as if she were watching something unseen. When I tried to approach her, she would retreat further into the shadows, refusing to come out. I chalked it up to the change in environment. Cats are creatures of habit, after all, and maybe she just needed time to adjust. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There was a coldness in the air, too, a strange, biting chill that seemed to seep through the walls when the sun set. At first, I thought it was just the temperature drop typical of the area at night, but it was more than that. It was an unnatural coldness that made my skin crawl. I could feel it following me through the house, lurking in the corners of rooms. The house, though beautiful, started to feel empty. Too empty. Even though I knew I was alone, the silence was almost oppressive. And every night, before I went to bed, I made sure to lock all the doors and windows just to be sure. One evening, after a long day of hiking, I returned to the house, feeling unusually uneasy. It was a quiet, dark night, and as I walked down the street toward the house, I couldn't shake the sense that something or someone was watching me. I thought I was imagining it, but as I opened the door and stepped inside, I was hit by a strange cold breeze, almost like the house had been waiting for me to arrive. I glanced around. The cats were nowhere to be seen. The shy one who had been glued to me earlier in the day was now nowhere to be found. My eyes scanned the house, looking for any sign of movement, but the place seemed lifeless. That's when I heard it. A faint sound. A soft rustle, as though something or someone was moving behind the walls. I froze, my blood running cold. I was sure I had heard footsteps. But when I checked the house, I found no one. I even stepped outside to look around the yard, but there was nothing. Just the wind. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if eyes were following me, hidden in the shadows. That night, I locked my bedroom door, even though I hadn't heard anything out of the ordinary since the brief noise. It felt like the only thing I could do to protect myself from whatever unseen force was haunting the house. The following morning, I decided to get out of the house. I needed some fresh air to clear my mind. But when I tried to leave, I discovered something that set my heart racing. The front door, which I was sure I had left unlocked the night before, was now locked from the inside. I stood there for a moment, staring at the handle, trying to process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. I hadn't locked it. I checked every other door. All locked. Every single one. The windows, too. Closed. but I had been inside, alone, with no one else around. Who could have locked the doors from the inside? I hadn't done it. Panic bubbled up inside me. My stomach turned. Something was terribly wrong. But the worst part was that I couldn't explain it. I was trapped in a house with no logical explanation for what was happening. That night, I couldn't sleep. The noises were getting worse. First, there was the scraping sound, like something dragging across the floor in one of the rooms. Then, it was the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and slow, moving through the house, outside my door, around the corners of the hallway. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal. Something was walking through the house. I tried to convince myself I was just hearing things. I tried to lie to myself, but the sound was too real. My heart was pounding in my chest, each thud echoing in the silence. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as the footsteps got closer, then stopped just outside my bedroom door. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted out of bed, grabbed my phone, and called 911. I told them someone was inside the house. I was terrified. I felt like I was losing my mind. The house felt like a prison, and I was the only one trapped inside it. But even as I spoke to the dispatcher, something strange happened. I heard a loud crash from the direction of the master bedroom. It was a sharp, violent sound like furniture being thrown across the room. I hung up and ran outside, shaking with fear, not caring about anything except getting out of that house. The police arrived quickly, but by the time they got there, the house was eerily quiet. They found no sign of anyone inside. No one lurking in the shadows, no hidden intruders. But when they went to check the master bedroom, the scene they uncovered made my blood run cold. The window was wide open, curtains billowing in the wind. And behind them was a mess: empty food containers, old clothing, and bits of trash scattered all over the floor. But the most chilling part? It looked like someone had been living there. For how long, I couldn't say. But someone had been watching me, following my every move. I realized then that I hadn't been alone in that house. I had been watched the whole time. Someone or something had been hiding in the shadows, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. Now that it's over, I can finally admit it, I was terrified. I had never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural before, but whatever happened in that house changed everything. I don't know what was lurking there, or who or what was watching me. But I do know this: the feeling of being trapped, of being watched, is not something I will ever forget. So, my advice to you: trust your instincts. If something feels off, if your gut is telling you that something isn't right, listen. Don't ignore it. The quiet, peaceful homes we think are safe, they can hide the darkest secrets. Never assume you're alone, because sometimes the house you think is empty is far from it. And sometimes, when you open that door, you might be welcoming something into your life that you can never escape. It was supposed to be a quiet, fun-filled Halloween. I had taken the babysitting job for the night, watching over two sweet kids, Emily and Jake, in their cozy suburban home. Their parents were away, leaving me in charge while they attended a Halloween party. The kids were so excited about trick-or-treating, and I was looking forward to a calm night, keeping them safe, making sure they didn't eat too much candy, and getting them to bed on time. The house was located on a quiet street, surrounded by tall trees that sway gently in the autumn breeze. The houses around us were all decorated with pumpkins, skeletons, and spider webs, but this neighborhood always felt a bit too quiet. I brushed off my unease, telling myself it was just the peaceful, rural setting. The kids and I spent hours carving pumpkins, playing games, and watching spooky movies. It felt like the perfect Halloween evening. But the night was far from ordinary. It started innocently enough. Well, That's what I thought at first. My friends, who lived a few blocks away, called me up and said they were coming by to prank me. They were all dressed up in cheesy costumes, skeletons, witches, and zombies, complete with cheap plastic masks, and planned to knock on the door as trick-or-treaters. I wasn't exactly thrilled about being pranked while I was babysitting, but I went along with it. It was Halloween, after all. They knocked on the door, and I opened it to a chorus of trick or treat. Their voices were muffled and high-pitched behind the masks. At first, I laughed, handing them some candy, their awkwardness adding to the humor. But there was something unsettling about the way they lingered at the door, standing just a little too close, as if they were trying to gauge my reaction. I brushed it off as just part of the Halloween fun. But as they left, I felt a twinge of something unsettling. It was like an itch at the back of my mind that I couldn't scratch away. After they left, I returned to the kids, trying to get them ready for bed. The night had grown colder, and the wind outside howled through the trees. The house seemed to grow quieter, the air heavier. Then, it started. At first, it was a small sound almost like a tap on the window. I glanced over, half expecting to see some random trick-or-treaters from the street. But no one was there. I dismissed it, telling myself it was just the wind or the branches brushing against the glass. But then it happened again. This time, the sound was louder. More deliberate. It was like someone was knocking at the window, sharp, quick taps that echoed through the empty house. My heart skipped a beat. I cautiously approached the window and peered through the blinds. The street was empty. There was no one outside. I checked the other windows, half expecting to see the same eerie emptiness. But then, another sound, louder this time, rang through the house. The doorbell. My pulse raced. Who could it be? No one else was supposed to be here, especially not at this hour. I opened the door slowly, my hands trembling, expecting a group of kids playing a prank. But there was nothing, just the cool night air and the empty street. The door slammed behind me, and I locked it without a second thought. But the unsettling feeling didn't leave. I glanced over at the kids. They were both still watching TV, blissfully unaware of the growing tension in the house. I tried to shake off the creeping feeling in my chest and sat down with them, forcing myself to focus on the movie. It wasn't long before the noises started again. Only this time, they weren't just knocks on the window or the doorbell ringing. The loud bangs echoed from every direction. Someone was slamming their hands against the windows, rattling the glass. I jumped to my feet, rushing to the window. My heart raced, my breath shallow. I could hear the pounding outside, too loud to ignore. I rushed from one window to the next, frantically checking for any sign of movement, but the street remained empty. I returned to the front door. The doorbell rang again, this time, incessantly. It wasn't just the ringing, it was the urgency behind it. Whoever was doing this wasn't just messing around, they were trying to scare me. The fear surged up my throat. I tried to steady my breath as I looked at the kids, their faces now reflecting confusion and concern. They were asking why the doorbell kept ringing. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what was happening. My phone desperately was in my hand before I even knew it, dialing my parents' number. "Mom, Dad, someone's outside trying to scare me," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know who they are, but please come home." The panic bubbled up inside me. My parents, still at the party, were on their way, but it felt like hours before they arrived. It only took a few more minutes, but when my parents arrived, the fear had escalated to something beyond what I could explain. My dad stormed out of the car, his face twisted with concern and anger. He rushed toward the door, shouting for me to stay inside, his eyes scanning the area. I stood frozen, too afraid to move. When my dad flung open the front door, the truth became painfully clear. There, standing on the front porch, were my friends laughing. Their masks had been removed, their faces flushed from running around. They had been behind this entire thing: the knocking, the banging on the windows, the relentless doorbell ringing. It was all a prank. A sick joke. Surprise, one of them said, grinning like an idiot. I couldn't believe it. I just stood there, staring at them, unable to find the words. All the fear, all the tension that had been building up inside me, turned to rage and humiliation. My dad didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, his voice low and filled with anger. You think this is funny? You think it's funny to scare her like that? To frighten two kids? What is wrong with you? I stood behind my dad, feeling like I was caught in some twisted version of a nightmare. The friends tried to explain, but nothing they said mattered. The damage was done. My trust had been shattered. The prank had gone too far. I stayed in the house that night, but the fear never left. I locked every door, double-checked every window. The night had turned from an innocent evening of babysitting into something far darker. Even as the kids fell asleep, I couldn't relax. My heart still raced, and the images of the relentless banging on the windows played in my mind like a broken record. The next day, I tried to act like nothing had happened, but the damage was done. I couldn't look at my friends the same way anymore. I couldn't forget the way they had stood there, laughing, while I was terrified in that house. The prank had been too much. Too cruel. Looking back, I realize how much that night taught me. Trust is fragile. You never know who will cross a line, and sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. They thought it was all fun and games. But to me, it was a nightmare that lasted long after the prank ended. So, my warning to you is this: be careful who you let into your life. Not every friend is truly your friend. Some people enjoy your fear more than your safety. And when your gut tells you that something isn't right, listen. Don't ignore it, because sometimes the people who claim to care about you can be the ones who break you the hardest. And never, ever trust a prank, especially when it's done at your expense.